who recycles, who protests toxic waste? How about a saboteur? 20 years after the first Earth Day, some environmentalists are so frustrated with the lack of progress, they've gone beyond blocking whaling vessels and started sinking them. They're still writing letters, but they're also wrecking bulldozers. That's how far a group called Earth First is willing to go to save the Earth.
Earth Firsters have a battle cry: no compromise in defense of Mother Earth. Earth First believes that the worldwide environmental crisis is so dire, they must shock the American public, industry, and even mainstream environmentalists with their words and actions. For instance, they put themselves in the path of destruction by sitting in trees marked for cutting.
I've cared about the forest ever since I was in grade school. And in the 20 years since then, I've seen too much of it disappear, and I can't take it anymore.
We're willing to risk our lives and risk our freedom for this cause, and that's why I think that eventually we'll win this cause.
If I knew I had a fatal disease, I would definitely do something like strap dynamite on myself and take out Glen Canyon Dam, or maybe the Maxam building in Los Angeles after it's closed up for the night.
Maxam is the name of the company cutting down most of the old redwoods in Northern California, like this one, which was over 1,000 years old. The point of these statements, Earth Firsters say, is to make people wake up to the crisis.
We want people to have the jitters. They ought to have the jitters. The planet is being killed by corporations right now. And if people don't get the jitters, then something is seriously wrong with the human species.
Earth First is warriors. Yeah. And if you aren't a warrior, then I suggest you find another group.
Dave Foreman is one of the founders of Earth First.
We are the most important generation of human beings to ever walk this planet. Today is the most critical time in 3.5 billion years of organic evolution on this planet. We aren't trying to save backpacking parks. Right. We aren't trying to clean up the air so we have nice scenic views of the Grand Canyon. We're trying to help evolution continue.
This group, founded by Foreman and 4 other environmental activists, has no leaders, no rules, and no official membership. Only the circulation of its unofficial newspaper gives any indication of their size, about 12,000. And where did the founder of this so-called radical environmental movement come from? He's no aging left-wing tree-hugging holdover from the 60s. Back then, Foreman was busy trying to help Barry Goldwater become president. But this conservative's love of the desert Southwest pulled him towards environmental issues until finally, in the late 70s, he became the chief lobbyist for the National Wilderness Society in Washington, D.C. Why did you leave that?
Because I started thinking, if I play my cards right, I could be Assistant Secretary of the Interior someday. I was soft-pedaling my message. I was making compromises I shouldn't make, that I wasn't so much involved with trying to protect the Earth as I was in playing the political game.
So in 1980, Foreman and 4 other environmental activists who felt the same frustration decided to leave the system and the cities behind.
Somebody had to be saying, honestly, what many environmentalists really felt in their hearts, that you don't have to justify the preservation of grizzly bears or rainforests for people, that they have a right to exist for their own sake, that somebody should be saying not just that we should protect a few areas, but that we should protect all that's still wild on this continent because there's so little left. And Earth First summarized our feelings. People before the Earth, people are going to lose in the long run, that Earth is first.
You know, there are a lot of people who I know who will watch you and listen to you talk about being a warrior in this society and become frightened by that kind of talk.
Maybe the terminology is a little frightening, but it doesn't, to me, have a violent connotation to it. It means that I am dedicated.
Being a warrior means taking personal risks. Being a warrior can mean, for some in Earth First, breaking the law. It can mean committing acts of sabotage to protect the Earth, and even taking pictures of themselves doing it. One of their techniques is to wreck logging machinery by pouring sand or dirt into the engine. They call these actions monkey wrenching, sticking a monkey wrench into the gears of the industrial machine to make it stop.
Monkey wrenching is in many ways, is using the tools of the devil against the devil.
Another Earth First tactic is to hammer long nails into trees logging companies plan to harvest, because workers can't safely cut those trees without a metal detector.
I've done all kinds of monkey wrenching.
Such as?
I've munched roads, I've spiked trees, I've siltated equipment.
The next day, at the work site, the loggers had a big surprise. Their dozer engine seized up, and their tires dropped like flies. And before they could raise a chainsaw, they found this note and cursed, 'cause it said, "No dice, these trees are spiked, sign love and peace, Earth first."
They're terrorizing rural Americans who live in the environment that they claim to be protecting.
Bruce Vinson is a timber industry spokesman whose family has been logging in northwest Montana for 4 generations.
I wish what we did wasn't so ugly.
Vinson's company harvests trees on private and national forest land with permission of the Forest Service. Logging companies will often cut down every single tree on large tracts of land, a practice being fought by both mainstream environmentalists and Earth First. Vinson told us that last year, his bulldozer was just one of several pieces of equipment sabotaged by people using Earth First techniques.
We have a fellow here in town, 8 pieces of machinery were attacked the weekend before this was. There were 60 people who were affected by that. 15 employees and families who didn't have income coming in. So who was attacked by that? Was it a machine? Earth First claims it was a machine. We just disable machinery. No, they disable families.
But Vinson says Earth First doesn't just attack machinery.
Tree spiking, if my brother's chainsaw hits that spike and his chain breaks, that chain's aimed at his face. If we're lucky enough that it doesn't happen out in the field, then we're going to mail it to the mill. And that shrapnel is going to be aimed at somebody's face in there. Not Weyerhaeuser, but Americans. They're attacking people.
Earth Firsters say people are never the target, adding that they always warn loggers about spikes because the point is to keep the trees standing. Reportedly, no Earth First action has ever caused an injury. However, one Northern California mill worker was almost decapitated when the factory's high-speed saw blade shattered on a spike, an incident not attributed to Earth First.
America treats them as if they're an environmental group, and they aren't. They're a terrorist group.
Terror, or terrorism, is the chainsaw ripping into a 500-year-old Douglas fir. It's the exploding harpoon going into a sperm whale. To me, that's what terrorism is.
Where do people learn how to spike trees, damage logging roads, pull down power lines? In a book co-authored by Dave Foreman called Eco Defense, a field guide to monkey wrenching.
I mean, I went through your book. You had a section here on disabling motor vehicles of all kinds, particularly heavy equipment. Jam the door and ignition locks with slivers of wood. Pour a gallon or more of water or brine into the fuel tank. Pour dirt, sand, or salt or grinding compound into the oil filler hole. Pour a box of quick rice in the radiator. It's not your equipment.
Right.
It's against the law.
It is against the law.
It's crime.
It is.
You willingly, you're telling people, you're advocating crime.
I'm not encouraging anybody to do anything.
You wrote the book.
I wrote the book. There are techniques there, but it's an individual decision.
You can't tell me that you wrote this book, How to Do This, that you're not encouraging it.
I think it's a worthwhile technique. I think that an old-growth forest has more value than a bulldozer. Yes, I think that.
That is unconscionable. I think that has no place in a civilized society.
Peter Burley, executive director of the Audubon Society, says that while he agrees with Earth First's assessment of the vast environmental crisis, he feels monkey wrenching solves nothing.
Whether it be done by people who have an environmental cause or people who have some other political cause, that is not the way that we get things done in this country.
It's the type of thing that started our country. The Declaration of Independence said that when a government becomes too distant or unresponsive to the people, that the people have right to take matters into their own hands. That's what happened in Boston Harbor 200 years ago. When King George refused to listen to us, a group of good citizens in Boston went on the ships of the East India Company and threw $1 million worth of tea in the harbor. I see that as being probably the classic act of monkey wrenching.
While some in Earth First want the forest saved, others are fighting our water and energy policies.
These electrical lines power one of the many pumping stations that supplies central Arizona with water. One day last May, about nightfall, FBI agents watched as 3 people began to cut through the base of this tower with a blowtorch. According to the government, their plan to take down this tower was financed by Earth First and was more than just an effort to disrupt power. The government alleges this was just a dress rehearsal for a mission that was much more difficult.
Mark Davis was one of the people arrested by the FBI that night.
You've been accused of plotting to take out power lines to 3 nuclear power plants at the same time.
2 nuclear power plants and 1 weapons production facility.
The facilities allegedly targeted were Palo Verde in California, as well as Diablo Canyon in California and Rocky Flats in Colorado. Davis admits to none of the charges against him and spoke to us against the advice of his attorney, knowing that everything he says can be used against him when he goes on trial later this year.
Allegedly, they were hoping, the dastardly perpetrators of this plot were hoping to have them stop working for a little while, have them turn off until they got their power lines repaired.
That clearly is terrorism that involves a whole lot of people who are not parties to the dispute, that folk who are dependent on those lines for their jobs and for their homes. And it's the wrong way to deal with the really fundamental issue, which is energy policy in this country, the destruction of the environment that energy generation causes, and how you appropriately meet the needs of a society to meet its energy needs in an environmentally sound way. This doesn't contribute to any of that kind of thinking, in my judgment.
1 millionth of a gram of plutonium in your lungs will guarantee you death by cancer within 20 years. 1,000th of a gram of plutonium in your lungs will kill you within a few hours. They're producing tons of this stuff a year. There's no place to put it and no way to isolate it from the environment. Now, I think it might be a legitimate activity on the part of someone to try to stop the production of that particular material.
If convicted of all the charges against him, which include damaging 29 poles carrying power to this uranium mine and twice sabotaging this ski lift during the off-season, Earth Firsters are against any destruction of the wilderness for man's recreation. If convicted, Davis could spend several decades in prison. He isn't the only one charged in the alleged scheme. The government says Dave Foreman helped the supposed conspirators by giving them money. Foreman denies the charge and claims he's always argued against attacking nuclear plants.
People say that your organization, that you are dangerous. Are you?
Well, dangerous has a lot of connotations to it. I hope I'm dangerous to apathy. I hope I'm dangerous to not taking responsibility for our life on this planet. I hope I'm dangerous to the attitude that the entire Earth is just a smorgasbord table for human beings.
You say we're doing everything okay as far as the forests are concerned. They say we're destroying the forests. We're destroying our environment. How do we know who to believe?
Well, I think what we need to believe is in the process. We talk to our land managers, we talk to biologists, and then we try to figure out what the truth is. We don't talk to somebody who's blowing machinery up to find out what shape the world's in.
I pity those people who are only interested in their paychecks and their VCRs and their own life. And I salute you, and I celebrate you, and I love you for being fellow warriors. Earth First!